Have you ever had a person say, you know, the Bible just isn't true? And you had no answer for them, right? See, most people don't have any clue what's happening. So I want to share with you a verse that I memorized when I was just in college, your age. So our verse, as we come up on the screen, before that. So, Hebrews 4:12. Hebrews 4:12 is a verse that's very dear to my heart. So we'll go to the next screen. In this verse, the Word of God is living and effective, sharper than any double-edged sword, separating as deeply between the soul and spirit, and I always do bone and marrow, but you can have different versions, able to judge the ideas and thoughts of the heart. When I first learned about this verse, I was actually going to Oklahoma. And by the way, aren't you guys doing something in Oklahoma City?
Woo! Yeah!
It's a little shameless plug with that too, right? So in Oklahoma City, we were going down Oklahoma City, and this is before we had cell phones or Game Boys or things to kind of keep you going. So we were doing these memory verses back and forth. And I didn't even know what this was. I was looking at this verse. But what I want you to do when you study the Word, I want you to study 10 verses before and 10 verses after. It's really important to see what these things are about. Paul is writing this in Hebrews. Most people don't know what Hebrews is about, but it's a very unique conversation. And this is in the middle of the conversation. So my wife kind of sets me up in some of my hotels, and every once in a while we get early into a hotel, and it's in Phoenix, and I mean it's hot. And I'm walking around trying to deal with things there, and you know, I'm sweating like a pig, and I finally just go back to the hotel. And I pull up my iPad Bible, and I just started to go deep. And this verse stopped me for literally 6 months. Over the last 8 years, I just dug deep into the Word. And I want to share with you the beauty in this Word. So, let's break up this thing as we go along. So we'll do the next slide here. Living and effective. Now, think about this for a second. This is one of my books. This is called Our Secret Zombie Life. It's something I talked about last time. So, when I think about a book, or when you think about a book, you'd say, is it an animate object? No. But you know the Bible is talking about animate objects. When it says living, that means animate. That's an audacious statement. But it uses a conjunction in between it. It says living and effective. That means energies. Now, if we're talking about a body, you talk about the heart, right? How many medical students are in here? Okay, so you know what I'm talking about, right? It regenerates yourself. But you know what this is actually sharing with you? It's saying that a book is alive and it has energies that are regenerative. And I want you to think about this thing right over here. It's a battery. Do you know that the Bible was talking about a battery almost 1,800 years before it existed? It's intimating it. Now in 250 BC, we have these issues of, Egypt was kind of playing around with the battery, but it wasn't until around the 1800s that batteries were even a possibility for us. And it's just part of our life, isn't it? But that's what this thing is talking about. But that's not even the coolest part. So the second part of our conversation here, go on to this one, is double-edged sword. Now, if you think about the double-edged sword, you're going to think about like something like Kill Bill, right? With, they're slicing and dicing and going after people, right? But that's not what this verse is talking about. Because as we look at the double-edged sword, it is the most dangerous sword, but what separating means is judgment. It's a surgeon's judgment. When a surgeon goes in and cuts, I've been cut on 9 separate times, 3 ACLs, and a whole bunch of other things. And I won't have another surgery unless I'm dying. So what occurs in there, the surgeon is going in and cutting at an exact spot. And so that surgeon is Jesus. By the way, someone want a book? Anyone would like a book? Pass it back. Okay.
It's you, Enzo, baby.
I know. You can get it now. So let's talk about those two areas we're talking about. So we got soul and spirit. Spirit is called pneuma. The first time I ever talked to an electrical engineer or a mechanical engineer, and you guys are mechanical engineers, right? Some of you guys mechanical?
Yeah.
Okay, so mechanical engineers, first time a mechanical engineer looked at it, he said, wait, that's the most powerful thing that we have in our environment, right? If we have an F5 tornado, it's going to level this place. And it's talked about as the spirit, or some parts will talk about as the breath. Then we have the soul. Now, some translations will call it mind, but that's not an effective translation when we look at it. It's actually the word psyche. Now, instantaneously, you'll get what that means, right? Psychology. When the Bible was written, there was nothing like psychology. My wife is a psych nurse, okay? There's nothing like it. So what is psychology? It's the balance between the mind, the will, and the emotions. So as a person, I can think, and if I have my mind out of balance, I'm overthinking, or I'm underthinking things. My will is what gets me up in the morning, right? It gets me to those things. And actually, when you're playing basketball and you're not at your second wind, you push through, and you keep pushing through, right? And then we have the emotions. Now, I can't get married without having the mind, the will, and the emotions, right? And these are all in balance, and that's exactly what psychologists figure out. But the Bible was talking about it long before that. One more. Let's go one more there. Okay. So, what I want you to see is that we have the spirit, the soul, and the body. In the spirit, up above, what happens when you become a believer in Christ, we have the spirit that's connected with you to God. And it's communicating about two things, truth and lie. And when you sense lie, it'll have this negative vibration. And when you sense truth, you'll vibrate or you'll resonate with it. Now, the second part is the soul. The soul is asking questions. When you ask questions, I talked to a whole bunch of you guys. And you guys were asking questions, saying, what am I supposed to do next? Right? How many of you are seniors here? And you're thinking about, what are you thinking about? What am I supposed to do next? Who am I supposed to marry? Those are important questions, you know, that God really wants to talk to you about. And so in here, when we have the soul in control, only the soul in control, it's a problem because it asks these questions and it cannot give the answers. Only your spirit can give those answers. So the spirit has to be up here. And you get your information from the Word, from the Bible, that tells your spirit or your soul what's going on there. And then we have our body in control. Now, if our body's always in control, you get overweight. And by the way, I talk to people all the time. I'm 52, and I started to gain weight and add so much weight. And I still have a lot of fat in my face, and I can't stand that. But, I've just lost a lot of weight over the last about, 4 months. And so I've lost like 28 pounds only because I was working hard to keep away from sugar, right? But when my soul is in control, I just want to eat. Or when my body's in control, I just want to eat. I'm just stuffing my face. And it just never stops. And guys, that's going to happen for you, okay? So here's what I want you to realize. Your spirit is talking to the Lord. And then it tells your soul what is next. and answers those deep questions. And then your soul will tell your body what to do. Okay? So next, if we have an immature body, it's like a baby. We have a few babies. Some of these people are having babies as we talk about. It just cries. It just does whatever it wants to. But the mature body pushes through the pain and the difficulties, right? And it pushes through and goes deep into it and says, I can deal with this. The immature soul is in alcohol, sex addiction. I had a partner in my business, and he was an unrepentant alcoholic. And it went on for so long, and my business was dying, and I finally had to delete Ivan out of it. He never got control of his alcoholism, and he died in his alcoholism. He shot himself when he was, and I think it was 5 years ago, because his soul was stuck there. If you have a mature soul, you start asking these great questions. And when I've talked to you guys stir me up, because inside of there's these questions that you're asking, and they're wonderful. And God cares about them. In the immature spirit, it senses lies, and it just kind of goes along with them. And I see people in churches all the time. It makes me crazy. They don't get into this thing called the Bible. Do you know that Martin Luther and all these other people would have died to have the information that you guys have at your fingertips? I can show you 2 Bibles that you can download that will cost you $15, that will give you more information about the Greek and Hebrew and all the stuff that no one ever had in the past. And some of you guys are taking advantage of it. And so when you have that ability, you're asking for truth and you lock onto it. Have you ever felt that? That lock onto the truth, and someone says something to you? I can't remember. There's one of you guys telling me about, you had learned about Romans 6:23. Was it you ever telling me about Romans 6:23? I can't remember who was saying this. And we're telling me about Romans 6:23, and then she got saved under it. And then she got these other people and they're saved under it. And then she told this other girl, and she was at her high school, was it Indiana? Does everyone remember who that was? Anyway, she was in Indiana, and she's telling, this girl's telling these other 6 girls, she's just telling them about it, and they go, I want that. I mean, holy cow. It's amazing to have that, because that's what we resonate with. So we'll do the next slide here. So that's not even the coolest part of this. So those are all great stuff. So we've just talked about electronics, and we've talked about psychology, but here is the part that messed me up. Joints, or some of them have bone, is harmos. That's the harmony within the body. Okay? And so we get it. The shin, knee, hip, all the way up, right? But what harmony is really talking about, and we get the word harmony as we're singing together in that perfect unison that happens, right? So you ask yourself, why was he using these words? Well, there was a reason for it. Because the next word messed me up. It's called mylos. How many of our medical students know what that is? Have you heard of mylos? In 1854, we have Rudolf Virchow that discovers the myelin sheath. And it's the connective tissues that go up to the brain. And it's how we have information flow. And this was put together and paired together, and we have a conjunction that we have the mylos and harmos. So I want you to think forward, so we'll move to the next slide. I want you to think, let's say we're in 1600. And I'm going to tell you, we're going to go riding. So you're going to come riding with me. And I'm like, okay, we're going to go to this cool place. And as we go across, I just remember, we're going to go across this creek bed. And you're going to see me jump and just get a running start. So you see me go, boom, I run across, and then I just disappear in the trees. And you're like, well, if he does it, I can do it, right? So you get a running start, boom, with your horse, and jump over, and you fall and hit your back. And you're sitting there, and you're like, oh, can't stand this. And after a few minutes, you get up and you say, come on, Scott, let's go back and we'll, get something done. And I can't get up. And you're like, come on, what's wrong with you? You're a wuss? No, I can't get up. And so you finally put me over the horse. You take me back into town, and after a couple weeks, you're okay, but I can't walk. And what is that? Does anyone know what that is? Paralysis. But up until 1854, people believed that you were cursed. You sinned, and you weren't good enough. But the Bible had this inside of it. So let me show you a little bit about what this is. So we have a myelin sheath with nerve fiber around it. And so this is the transmission from one part of the body, so we have the cell, out to the end of it. Okay? So when we have a section of the neurology, we have the cell, it has this perfect dendrite out to the next cell. And that's what's going on. But do you know that the Bible already knew it was in there for 1,800 years? So when people tell you this statement, they say, guess what? The Bible's filled with a whole bunch of errors. In one verse, I just showed you electronics before it existed, psychology before it ever existed, and lastly, neurology. The very first time I took neurology, it was so hard. As an audiologist, I have to learn from the neck up of every little, detail. And we go through this and we understand this, and it seems like kind of straightforward to you, right? Because you're used to people that have paralysis, whether they're paraplegic or quad. But that wasn't understood up until 1854 when Rudolf Virchow noticed this. How cool is that? It got me stuck for 6 months in that. So the next part of the verse is this word called krino, or judge. It is able to judge. Krino means perfect understanding. So it's got this perfect understanding of the ideas and thoughts of the heart. So idea means moral understanding or the intent. And the thoughts are the deliberation, the consideration to accomplish the task. Now, how many women think they know men? Come on. My wife thinks she knows me, right? So women kind of know guys. But do you always judge the intent of the guy perfectly? But the Word does. And it's already inside of you. So in our last slide here, I'll show you this at this point. To sum it up, we have in one verse medical understanding, electrical understanding, psychology, a perfect understanding. And if you will just get into the Word, and I see so many of you guys that excite me, the way that you get into the Word. But I had something that happened to me. I'm going to end with this kind of circumstance. So I'm just going to give you a little tidbit. So Becky and I were talking yesterday. And I had no idea what I was talking about. And so Becky can nod off. She knows what I'm talking about. But she's the only person. So I'm getting this idea in a word. There are two words that most people don't know anything about. It's redemption and righteousness. When you feel inside of yourself, you feel not good enough in front of the Lord. Do you feel that way? Do you feel like I have sin and He wouldn't accept me? How many of you guys have student debt? Okay. So I want you to think about this circumstance. So I want you to think about, you get a letter from the financial aid office. And they say this vague statement, and you're like, what? So you go into the office and they say, well, let me tell you. Someone walked in and paid your $100,000 debt. You're like, who is it? Is it Uncle Harry? No. I can't tell you who it is. She just tells you it's just paid. And so it brings you to a zero balance. Redemption is taking your balance and knocking it off. So if you feel like you're $150,000 in debt with the Lord, and by the way, my partner Ivan always felt millions of dollars in debt to the Lord. And he never understood that long time ago, in 33 AD, Christ paid for your sin, and he paid for the future and the past sin. But that just brings you to a 0 point. Then, as you graduate, you get out, and let's say Google. You start with Google, and they walk in your first day, and they say, okay, you got the job, but you're going to get 1.2 million stock option points. And you can use it anytime you want to. You go, well, that's a lot of money, right? That's what righteousness is. It means equity. You have equity with God, and it's never gone away. You have all of that stuff that you've done is wiped completely away. Don't let anyone tell you that. And he has given you equity, an equity with the Lord that is always yours. Guys, if you want that, it's available for you. And you got staff members here that will walk you through that process. I know I wanted that, but no one ever explained that to me. And I wished someone had a long time ago. And if they had, it would have made a massive difference in it. But if you want that equity and that redemption of that knockoff of all that stuff, it's available. So I'm going to have Jason pray over you guys. Come on, Jason.
Thanks, Scott. Pray with me real quick. God, we are grateful for you. God, I thank you that your word, it says, is living and active. That when we open the scriptures, when we open the Bible, there's really not anything really true that we can give our opinions about. I don't have many opinions that are true, but when I open the Bible and I read it, it says the Word of God is living and active. It means that when we open it up, it actually does something to us and we can see truth. God, thank you for tonight that you could reveal to us that even through one verse that you were speaking truth 2,000 years ago. And that truth was that Jesus Christ would come, that he would die and he would live a life that was perfect, that was everlasting, that would last forever, that would redeem us. God, I know for me, I have sinned. And I fall short of you. But God, it says that if we turn from our sin and we trust that Jesus is Lord, that we can have new life. We don't have to live in darkness. We don't have to live in lie. As Scott was talking, we don't have to live with a dead soul, with an immature soul, with a soul that's addicted to alcohol, drugs, sex, whatever it is. We don't have to live like that anymore. That Jesus came so that we might have life and life to the full. And God, I pray if there is someone in here tonight that goes, I'm not living life to the full. I feel that. That they would go, Jesus, I want to make you Lord over my life. I pray they would do that. All it takes is just a simple surrender to God. They're going, I trust you, Jesus, and I want you to take my sin, and I want you to make me new. And God, I pray if there's people in here that have made that decision to trust Christ, that they would see the Bible as authoritative in their life. And I know they're like, man, I'll get to it later, I'll do it later. I pray that they would get a hunger. I pray that they would do something about it. God, as they have in their hands, we gave them 7 days of how to read the Bible. God, I pray that every day that people in here would commit and go, I'm going to read the scriptures. I'm going to know what God says. I want to know truth. So God, we're just going to sing a couple songs to you, and I just ask as we do that, Lord, that you would be with us, that we would find rest. God, it's so busy in our lives. God, life is so crazy and life is so hard. But I just pray this next 10 minutes as we sing these 2 songs, God, that we could just rest in you and know that you are God and you are good. Amen.